used a feature that I've designed, which is the search assistant. So when you type in, you see the suggestions down below. That's a suggestion that I've done. I've worked with pretty much all the big companies that are out there, worked and consulted. For me, teaching is a passion. And that's one of the reasons why I do this is I like to teach. And by the way, if I can find awesome people to hire, that's a great win for me. So let's go on to the next slide. So the question here that we're going to be talking about today is how do you crack an interview? And remember, from 2 days ago, I said your portfolio is the center of everything, right? If you do your portfolio right, you're going to create opportunities for people to ask you the right kind of questions. Okay, so you're designing the interview for yourself. And so what we are going to talk about today is how do you communicate that you are at a certain level? Okay, how do you communicate? And that level defines the salary that you're going to get. Okay, are you coming in as a junior, as a mid-level, as a senior? You need to be able to communicate it. And then you need to be able to talk about what kinds of tasks that you're going to get. So we're going to talk about the different kinds of tasks. These are standard tasks. Pretty much there is no variation, right? There may be 5 or 6% variation upper niche, but most companies will give you these same kinds of tasks. You can't go wrong in them. And then you will have about 36 different interview questions that you should definitely prepare for. And when I was starting off in my career, I had listed out a bunch of questions, and what I would literally do was I'd turn on a video camera and I would have one of my friends ask me that question, and I would basically practice in front of the camera. And then I would rewind it and watch it with my friend, and my friend would be my critique buddy. And then we would both kind of look at it plus or minus, and then we would kind of come up with a strategy. Okay, so every step of the way is planned. Every step of the way is strategized. And so that's how you get into the jobs that you want. Okay, it does not happen by luck. It happens by strategy. And that's what I want you to take away when you take away all 3 days from here. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so what we talked about yesterday was technical skills. Okay, yesterday we evaluated portfolios, and we evaluated how you need to think about interaction, visual research, and how you should answer. So all of that stuff, yesterday we talked about it. Okay, and so when you are going in for an interview, any interviewer is looking at both those sides. The technical skills, your task will already prove it, and then your scope of thought is what they're trying to figure out in your interview, like how senior or junior is this person. Okay, so let's actually think about scope of thought. Okay, so we did a bunch of surveys. We sent you the tool where you can decide on your scope of thought. Let's actually go to that. Okay, so in all of that, we had approximately about 100 odd people that responded in the, shared their information and then responded. So when we look at it, you have about 5 people that were clearly looking at a chief experience level thought in terms of scope of thought. Now, I do not know about your skill set, but your technical skills, but I do know what your thought process is, right? So, and what I say is your thought process cannot be taught, right? The skill set can be taught. And so if your thought process is there, then you can pick up the skill set. There is no problem in that. And so when you look at the chief experience officer level, there were about 5 people who were thinking at a real high experience level. They were thinking about it. And then when you look at, there were about 4 people that were looking at it at a principal level. So principal level is I'm looking at a product level. Okay. Then there was 1 person who was thinking at a lead level. And again, the way we asked the question was interesting, right? It's not what you think about yourself. It's about how your company perceives you. Okay. So there's a difference because, your actions define how your company perceives you. Okay. And so when your company perceives you in a certain way, they put you in that role and you eventually do that kind of work at that level. Okay. So when you're looking at the lead level, there was 1 person who was looking at, what do you call, screens and, can we go back? Let me just very quickly review problems, right? So lead level is the problem level domain thinking. So there was 1 person that was looking at the product level, problem level. Then there were 19 people that were looking at an individual contributor level, okay, which were at screen levels. And there were 18 people that were looking at junior individual contributor level, that is at widget level. So usually, as far as I'm concerned, a junior individual contributor is somebody who's just starting off or is probably a graphic designer, and that's where there were 18. And most interestingly, there were 55 people who could not be clarified because they were doing things at different levels. So at one time you're doing a widget, at another time you're doing something else, at another time you're doing something else. So there was a lot of confusion about that specific role. And I'm going to break that down. So for those of you that have got, the 55 of you that have got this, and this is fairly common, that happens all the time, right? What's going to happen is we all think for different things, we'll think at different levels of abstraction. So the trick is, how you get promoted is you need to be performing consistently at a certain level. If you're not performing consistently at a certain level, your company is going to evaluate at the minimum basic level. Okay. So if the minimum is junior IC and you're doing something, let's say at a principal level, it doesn't matter. Okay. You're still a junior IC because that's how the company is looking at you. Okay. So if your minimum is a individual contributor, then that's where you are. And the company is basically, the rest of the stuff is luck, right? So the company is basically saying, okay, this person can do that, but then you're not getting credit for it. Okay. So the strategy for all of you as you're thinking is, okay, I understand what I'm not doing consistently. And that's what I want you to understand from today's presentation. What am I not doing consistently so I can do more of it? Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. So before we go, everybody understand what we have here? Just type in yes so I can go on to the next step. Cool. Awesome. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay. So when you're looking at the scope of thought, and I want you to kind of now answer these questions for those of you, especially the 55 of you that were kind of all over the place, look at what was the bare minimum that you had answered. Okay. So when you're looking at a junior contributor, mostly it is like, design this widget, design this icon, maybe design this screen, right? But most of it is just like do the small level stuff, right? That is where you're doing the junior individual contributor level. Okay, let's go to the next level. So the individual contributor level is you're getting screens. So now you say, okay, here are the screens. And a lot of times the organizations themselves stagnate. So what the organization will do is engineering will do everything. And then they'll give you that screen and say, make it look beautiful. Okay. Now, the problem with that is what it's putting lipstick on the pig. So if the logic behind the screen is bad or whatever, if you get a pig and say, make the pig look beautiful, what do? At best, you can put lipstick on the pig and say, I'm done with my work, right? And that's what it is. So a lot of times in organizations which already define the screens and give them to you, you are probably working at an individual contributor level without understanding the larger components of the game, okay? So either you need to sit down and have a discussion with your manager that, hey, bring me into the meeting earlier, or you need to go find a different role that is going to allow you to kind of be more, get into the system earlier on. Okay, this is a conversation that you need to look at. If you are here, there's a very high likelihood that you will stagnate very, very quickly because, you will not build a portfolio for the next job and you're kind of stuck in this place. So that is the thing that you need to worry about. Let's go to the next slide. Leads, right? Leads are where this is the kind of conversations you're having with all of your partners, with the engineers, product managers, and all that, right? Okay, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Okay, now, is this the only way to solve it? Are there other ways to solve it? Well, why is this solution better than other solutions? Okay, those are the kind of conversations you are having with your teammates. Okay. And when you go present it to the leadership as well, and this is, especially if you're working at the lead and your company is allowing you to work at that level, it is a UX company for sure. Okay. So at the bare minimum, it's a type 2 company. Okay. Now the individual contributor, junior individual contributor, either you are not capable or your company is a type 1 company. So there is that kind of a mismatch that you need to think about. But here it's all the conversations are problem solutions, trade-offs, and what works better in what kind of situations. Okay, you might even be discussing engineering trade-offs. So you might say, if I have to do this, it requires 10 hours of engineering resources. If you do this, it might only require 20 minutes of engineering resources. So those are also trade-off discussions you will be having as a lead. Okay. Now let's go to the next one. Okay. Principal, right? Principal is basically, this is the individual that is involved in the whole product strategy. They're not looking at just like, one experience or whatever. It's a complete product strategy. And they're basically saying how many engineers, what kind of engineers do we need to partner with, what are the outcomes that we are driving, what are the metrics that we are going to define our success by, what are the trade-offs for this product, we're doing it X way or Y way, if you think about, I can very well imagine discussions that happen on some of these dating apps, right? Why is swipe right or swipe left the only interaction that is there, right? Or the primary interaction that is there? Or when you think about a discussion where you're saying, well, in Facebook, how do we get more engagement, right? So can we start the next video automatically? There's lots of interesting discussions that are happening. There's a lot of different metrics and stuff that you're thinking about, right? You're not thinking about the execution, but you're thinking about the strategy of the product itself. And so that's where you're looking at product trade-offs, outcomes, and cross-disciplinary partnership. So what I'm hoping when I describe this is for the 55 of you that have not determined, look at what is the minimum thing you're doing. And that is what your company is looking at you as. Okay. I hope it would be higher, but the company will only look at the minimum. That's what it is, because that's what they think is the non-risky part and everything else is risky. You may or may not deliver on the next level. So that's how companies will look at it. So let's go on to the next component. And the chief experience officer, right, is usually thinking about how do I create experiences. They're not even thinking online, offline, none of that stuff. They're not thinking I'm only going to create a product. They're thinking offline, online, everything, right? So they're looking at the whole gamut. They're also looking at business. How is the business going to work? If I do solution A, what is the cost structure for it? If I do solution B, what is the cost structure of it? What are the strategies? What are the trade-offs? And so they're basically looking at a very, very high level. Okay. And this is very, very interesting because, I'm also part of this group, which is the CEOs group in Hyderabad, which is, there's like a lot of CEOs across all of Hyderabad that we all sit together and we share all our information, right? And so generally, if somebody says, hey, I got this one individual, you put this resume on there and a CEO, recommends it, you have probably 10 calls coming in the next 5 minutes. And Sarthak is there. He's a good example of that, right? So he had like 12 interviews in 6 hours. So, but what happens when I talk to all of these guys, right, is this. So I asked them like, okay, so how did you become the CEO and all that, right? So there's this one example of this individual who is basically part of a, he's got a dental clinic, okay? And I sit down with him like, how did you start your dental clinic? And he basically says, Dekho, when I started off, my wife was a dentist, I was a dentist, we both got married. We met each other when we were studying our, doing dentistry, when we were learning dentistry. But as soon as we graduated, I realized I don't want to clean people's teeth, right? So the first thing I did was I went and hired 10 people. Okay. And these 10 guys, then I set up a clinic. Okay. So if you think about it, it takes a certain level of guts to do that, because here is this guy who's not even getting their own salary. He's now taking on the responsibility of 10 people's salaries, right? So it is a different mindset. That's actually a chief experience officer mindset. You're thinking at a CXO level where you're thinking, okay, that's fine. I'm going to take on that ambiguity. So that is the other component that you need to think about is, how do I do this ambiguity? Okay. Now, there's also another example that I say, because most people think that I have to start from the junior and go up to the senior. No, that is also false. Okay. And I'll tell you this one story of this gentleman called Ruta Raju, and you can look him up on LinkedIn. He's one of those guys that I actually admire a lot. Just literally like, this guy is a genius. Okay. So I was running the global research teams out of Sunnyvale. And I get this invitation from India, and this gentleman Ruta Raju says, hey, Prasad, we'd like to invite you to India to come train our researchers in India. I'm like, okay. So he pays my ticket, does everything. So I land up in India and I'm sitting and talking to Ruta. And he's a very young guy. He's literally a kid. And he's the head of design in India. And I'm like, okay, so Iska, I have to get this guy's story. So I go take him out for drinks and I sit down and I say, okay, Ruta, how did you become the head of design? He says, very simple, right? When I got my first job, I was basically the only designer in the whole of Yahoo India. Okay. Then I realized that when I did not want to do that kind of work, right? Where I was the only guy. So he went and talked to HR and he realized that you can hire as many interns as you want and nobody will question you, right? This guy went to IIT Mumbai and hired 15 interns and hired all of them and brought them in and allocated one intern to one product, right? 3 months or 4 months later, when the internship was over and all these interns were going up, everybody said, oh my God, how will we work? How will we survive and all that? We need to hire them. So the Yahoo ended up hiring all these interns full-time. Okay. And they said, who's going to manage? Well, Ruta is managing already, make him the head of design, let him manage. He didn't do a single day of design. Right. So that is what I mean is the thought process, right? It's if you can manage your thought process, you can ace it. Okay. Now he's like, of course, I'm not saying he's a bad designer. He knows his craft. He knows if you need to manage, you need to know enough to tell people what to do correctly or right. So this guy knows his game, but he never did design. He just basically made other people execute on it, right? And so that's what I mean, mindset, thought process, when you're thinking about scope of thought. Okay. Everybody clear on this? Because this is a really, really important concept that I want you all to understand for sure. Awesome. So now let's go to the next slide. Okay. So now here are simple tasks that you will get. Different kinds of tasks you will get, different. So if the 3 basic buckets that you will get. One is a take-home task where people will give it to you remotely. The second is you're coming into the location and they'll make you do whiteboarding. And the third one is a redesign kind of tasks. Okay. Now, the interesting component is this. Okay. And this is what I say practically, because when you go on LinkedIn and places like those, people will always complain like, companies are giving their task and they're making me do the actual project. So, it is below my dignity. They should pay me for it, right? I respect that thought process. But reality wise, because there are so many fake resumes, I will not hire anybody without a task. Right? And that is the reality of it. Okay. And so, but there are interesting tricks that companies will do when they make you do the task. Okay. So for example, some companies will give you a task that will actually take 2 or 3 months from a 4-person team. They will tell you, do this task, you have 4 days to complete it. Right? So what they're looking is they're trying to understand your scope of thought. Okay. So what is scope of thought? If you take they're giving you a massive task, can you break the task down? Can you say what task you're prioritizing and why you're prioritizing it? And then focus on the small components that you can showcase to me that will tell me you're good or not. Okay, that is scope of thought, because are you able to handle ambiguity? A lot of people say this is too much work. I only gave 8 hours of time. I could not do it, right? Those guys are fired, right? You don't even hire them. In fact, they're not fired. They're not hired, right? Whereas the people that come in and say, okay, I understand this is the task. I only have 8 hours of work. I only have 8 hours to do. And so this is how I broke down the task. This is how my system is. Now, those guys you really want to hire, because they're very systematic and they can manage other people. If you can plan, you can manage. So now when you look at redesign, basic interaction design is, okay, here's a process. Can you fix it? Okay. Can you reduce the ambiguity in this experience? What are the problems, right? So basically you will have to, and this is what I say is, part of the training is you should be able to look at a design, critique it and tell what are the weaknesses in that design. Minimum. That's what table stakes are. Okay. Visual design is reduce the visual clutter or redesign it. And just like yesterday, I gave you the task, right? One guy's UI, UX. Okay. That's how I'm telling the scope of thought. Is this person thinking about the user problem and designing it, or just designing, putting colors there? So that's scope of thought problem. Okay. Research. Well, I give a very ambiguous problem. Can you prioritize and tell me what your research strategy is? Okay. Combination is, you just get a product or whatever and say, can you make it better? Right. And I'm going to look, and it's very vague, but I'm going to look to the other person to say how they're going to approach it and solve it. Okay. Now, whiteboarding is a very interesting thing. In whiteboarding, what happens is usually you will have another person sitting with you and discussing with you. So they will say, okay, so what will you do in this case? So they are just basically looking at your thought process. And usually when you look at some of the best performing teams, they depend on whiteboarding for this, because redesigning and all that is a waste of time. I would rather sit down with the designer and understand their thought process and say, okay, now what will you do here? What will I do here? Then I will say, okay, imagine that there was a problem here. How will you solve it? Now, what kind of problems can show up here? So I'm basically asking questions while the person is solving it. Okay, so that way I'm testing all possible use cases to see how broadly they know the problem. So when you're looking at interaction design, it's like ideate different solutions, because ideation is the bare minimum skill that I want. How can you be a designer if you can't think of different variations? Okay. So I'm going to say, okay, give ideate. Then I will start putting problems in there. Then I'll say, how are you ideating? How are you adapting? Right. Or I might say, okay, increase advertising revenue. And this is not a common task. This is a sample task. Okay. So interaction design, how do I increase revenue? What are the strategies that you will do? Or how do I increase click-through? I will basically put a metric and say, how do you improve this metric? So that's a question. Or, visual design, you say, okay, fix an outdated design. How do you build trust or something like that? Or define the visual concepts that are there, or plan a method, audit a design. So these are the different kinds of things. And combination is identify the issues and plan the process. So if you look at it, most of the time, the one main component that most of these companies are looking at is they are looking at your ability to plan and strategize. Okay. If you cannot plan and strategize, you're either an IC or a junior IC. Okay. So that is the main trick that is in there. Okay. Now somebody was asking what are metrics? So metrics can be engagement, retention, usability. So there are different kind of metrics, right? How many people use your product? How many people come back to the product again? So those are metrics. So they will give you a metric and say, how would you improve it? Okay. So the underlying question is, do you know all the metrics, or do you know what the most common metrics mean? Okay. So that would be something. And when you're getting a take-home exam, it might just be like design for a problem statement. The most common one is people will give you a problem statement and say, solve it. Okay. And so then and if you are able to solve that, that is pretty much how you kind of go about it. Okay. So let's see. The question is, how much importance is given to theoretical knowledge of the candidate? See, theory, everybody knows, right? Like what we were discussing, every boot camp will teach you the same theory. Everybody will teach you the same theory, right? And, even the interviewer, sometimes that's also one of the ways that you can figure out it's a type 1 company or not. So when I was starting off in my career, when we were interviewing, there were 2 companies that were interviewing me. Okay. And both companies had similar, the company A would only ask application type questions, and they would be interested to know how I took my theory and applied it to this problem. Okay. The company B would only ask me questions. Okay. Can you tell me what is usability testing? How many people will you test in usability? Right. And so at some point when company B, I would keep answering, they say, no, that's not correct. That's not correct. And I say, wait a minute. Then I very quickly figured out what textbook they were reading from. So whatever that textbook was, I would just repeat what is in that textbook. And they, oh, very good answer, right? And I got an offer from both the companies. Right. And the issue is like, which company will it take? One company is a type 1 company. The other company is a type 3 company. Right. It was a no-brainer. So I ended up going to one of these Fortune 500 companies, and that built up my whole career there. Right. Whereas this other company is like, it's still a type 1 company even today, even though it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's a huge company. It is still a type 1 company as far as design is concerned. Right. So yeah, so that's what it is. So again, for those people that are saying, how much theory should I know? It's not a theory that is important. Think 3 idiots, right? How do you apply that theory into a practical problem? That is what is more important from a company's perspective when you're interviewing. Okay. And this is also, unfortunately, the question that people had asked me in the previous Q&A session, what does a boot camp does? A boot camp basically teaches you theory, right? Fitts law sikha diya, but how does Fitts law apply to this problem? Does it even apply? Should you even worry about Fitts law? Right? Now, that is a question that you need to be able to answer. Okay. So cool. So, yeah, so this is a really good question that Manjari asked. If CVs and portfolios are not trustworthy, then why bother with portfolios? Shouldn't the test be enough? Okay. I love this question. I'm loving this crowd because, you guys are like trying to find holes in my arguments, and I love it. So the answer is this. Okay. There are a lot of people looking for jobs, right? There are a lot of people looking for jobs. So somehow I need to be able to clean out people, right? Because if I'm getting 500 resumes a month, like, I literally, UX Reactor gets 500 resumes a month. And so out of those 500 resumes, how do I very quickly decide which people are good, which people are bad? right? So that is where your CVs and portfolios are the first round. We assume that there will still be people who have lied on their stuff, but for the people that have not lied, I can reject them very, very quickly, right? Then for the remaining people, the HR person will pick up the phone and call maybe 30-minute discussion. And then when you're doing the discussion, the HR person is looking to see, okay, does the experience or the mindset that the portfolio has shown, is that reflected in the way the person is talking, right? It's still a smell test. So that way, by the time you come to the technical round, usually almost about 60 to 70 people are rejected. And so it is a very good way for us to reject people, right? It is not a good way to select, but initially we do the CVs and portfolios a rejection. And when it gets closer towards the end of the process, it is used for selection. And that's why you do the task. Hopefully that answers your question, Manjari. But it's a really, really good question. I love it. Okay. So do whiteboard tasks provide some buffer time to start away, right? So this is Krati is asking. So this is something that no, right? You don't want to give starting some time to think about it. Okay, because what you're basically doing is you're giving the task and you're observing how the person reacts. You're putting them under pressure. Okay, and when the other person is in pressure, whatever they're doing is how they're handling it. So if the other person says, hey, can I have 5 minutes to think about it? For sure. Right? So I know the person is not under pressure. He's asking me and he's challenging me again. So that's actually a good sign. But if the other person says, oh, you're panicked and all that, I know this guy can't handle the stress. Okay. So the trick is always when you get the whiteboard, you always say, okay, can I have 5 minutes to think about it? The task itself might be only 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Okay. So you're running short on time. So you want to also internally in your mind plan how you're going to do the task. Okay, so you might say, okay, can I have 5 minutes? Let me think about it. You have your framework in place. You very quickly plan, okay, what are you going to do? And then you say, okay, here's my first cut. And then you don't want to give a solution. Okay, you want to start thinking these are the unique problems I see in this challenge. And so I think I have to solve these problems. And this is how I'm prioritizing them. So explain your thought process. That is what whiteboarding does for you. Okay, and this is where the other person is your challenger. They'll say, no, the PM says they're going to launch the product in 4 days. So what are you going to do now? Okay, so now they're going to give you these different situations and they'll make you modify your strategy. And it's always about observing how are you reacting to that situation and are you able to correctly apply your concepts in that moment. And that's how it works. So hopefully, Krati, that answers your question. All right, so let's see. I understand what type of company A and company B asked there. So see, company C, type company B, like the top, the higher company B's, the type 2 companies and type 3 companies, rarely, the bottom type 2 companies will always still be asking the basic questions, right? Theory. But on the higher end, higher end type 2 companies and higher end and type 3 companies by default will never ask you theory, right? They will never ask you what is Fitts law, never, right? Unless and until, when you are interviewing and, it's a technical interview and, they just want to find out, okay, do you know this? They'll say, what is Fitts law? If they think you're very junior, they may ask you theoretical questions because they might say, okay, maybe the person knows theory and then maybe they can apply. So they are basically looking to see where to place you. But when you're going at an individual contributor or a lead level, nobody is going to ask you theory questions, right? It'll all be application level questions. Okay. So hopefully, Nishant, that answers your question, right? Aman, is coding really? No, coding, no. So this, we talked about it in type 1, type 2, type 3 companies, right? When there's also another exercise that I've done where how do you tell what the company is based on the resume? So this is on LinkedIn based on the job description. So just look at that, where I've evaluated 4 different job descriptions and I've said what type of a company it is. Okay, so you can very quickly tell, and companies that ask for coding for a UI UX designer generally does not know UX. Right, and it is yeah. So I would just say, let's just keep it simple. These guys don't know what they're talking about. So if you're looking at UX jobs, you should not be asked to code, right? However, if you do know coding, it's benefit because you can talk to your engineers on how to do the job. Okay. All right. So Debyud asked, does the thought process approach taken to approve at a solution, is it preferred over experience during an interview? See, experience can be anything. I have built the Indian arm of UX Reactor for, the first 6 years. I was literally staying in India and building up the company, right? Now, what is interesting is I've seen this happen many, many times. And even for those of you that are experienced, I'm sure you have had the same situation. You'll be in a job, you're a graphic designer. And at some point you will say, okay, I want to resign, I want to go. Okay. So what do? You go to your boss and say, boss, I'm resigning, I want to do UX. Boss says, no, I'll give you UX job role here only. I'll give you a role, I'll give you a title. Okay. So now you will stay in the company because you're getting a UX title, but you're still doing the same old graphic design. Now, 3 years later, you come out and you say, okay, I've got 6 years of experience as a graphic designer or as a UX designer. I'm going to look at that person and say, I can't trust those years of experience. Right. And this is also another open secret that is open within all the CEOs of companies. When we look at it, whatever somebody says their experience, we do -2. Right. If somebody says it is 2 years of experience, we assume that person is a fresher. Right. And again, it's a two-way street, right? So this is unless and until the individual can prove to me that they know stuff, it doesn't work, right? And which is why when I do the portfolio and all that stuff, what I say is, see, you have to build your brand. You can never lie when you're in an interview, when you're in your resume portfolio, nothing, never lie there, right? Whatever you are, you present it and you do a good job of it, you will get a job because companies respect the honesty that you bring to the table. Right. And so that is what I would say is the thing. So experience during an interview really, it is a risky kind of a situation, right? So some companies will definitely look at experience when they're looking at CTC. But that's also something that companies are starting to realize, 5 years of experience will get this salary. Not really, right? I mean, if you think about it, this was in fact one of the people that was talking to me like, okay, 3 years of experience, itna salary aa raha hai. And I'm saying, I tell them, no, don't look at the experience and say experience equals to more money, right? It is what the person is able to deliver. So somebody with 3 years of experience might actually be getting way more salary than somebody with 6 years of experience, right? And I've seen it within our community itself. So that is a reality. So Saransh says, okay, so I'm going to take a lot of these questions. I'm going to put it back to the last 30 minutes. So for those of you that want to stay 30 minutes more, I will answer a lot more questions. But let's go through this because there are quite a few questions because you still want to talk about the 34 questions that you want to know before you go in for an interview. So let's, Saransh and team, anybody after that, please don't mind it, but let me skip this and you stay for 30 minutes afterwards. I'll answer. Okay. So now, let us look at the kinds of questions that you will get when you're in the interview. So when you go into an interview, your recruiters are basically trying to make 6 kinds of decisions on you. Okay. And all these 6, they will basically try to say, what is the scope of thought on process? What is the scope of thought on execution? What is the scope of thought on connecting the dots? So I'm evaluating scope of thoughts in all of these. Okay, and your portfolio and the tasks that you're given are the basis for the questions that will come from here. Okay, so the 6 key things: process, execution skills, connecting the dots, point of view, being self-aware and being competent, and then having a cultural match. These are the 6 types of questions that people are looking for. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so let's look at this. So this is a portfolio. You've got this. Okay, so what kind of questions can you ask on this? All right, so let's go to the next slide. So this one is primarily all of these questions here are process related. Okay, because the person did the design. Now it looks a little bit amateurish, but I can see that, they're aligned and they're set up and all that stuff. And I can probably see like, yeah, this might actually work in a Windows mobile kind of an experience. So potentially, there are possibilities that it might actually be right. So I'm not going to worry about the quality, but I'm going to say, well, what is your process? Why did you do this decision? Right? So these kinds of portfolios will actually lead to process related questions. So let's go to the next one. Right? So the common questions that you will get is, okay, what was your approach? What was your framework? So that is what I'm trying to answer. Okay. And then I'm trying to form an opinion. Is this good design or bad design? Because by looking at it, I cannot tell it's good design or bad design. Okay. And then knowing whether you're up to date with the existing body of knowledge. So these are the 3 things that I'm looking at. So the kinds of questions is, hey, what process did you follow? Why did you follow this process? Why not like the other process, right? So have you, did you use some existing process or did you create your own process? right? Why did you do that? Now, were there no other processes that were available? So what is the significance of this part of a process? They might point to one particular process. Why did you do only this way, right? Would the same process work for some other project, right? So can you tell me an example of a place where, this would fail, this process would fail, right? So can you tell me about all the choices you made and why you made that choice in this project? Okay. So again, like, remember when I told you, like, if you create opportunities in your project, when you create opportunities in a project, people will ask you questions. So you can say, okay, I want to ask these kinds of, I know I've practiced these kind of questions. So let me basically create a portfolio that addresses those kinds of questions. So now what happens is you are digging a hole and waiting for the interviewer to come fall into that hole, right? Now, the interviewer is a little bit smarter. They'll figure out what you're doing and they will try to kind of go around you after the first 3 or 4 questions. But more or less, you are kind of bringing them into a space where you can answer the questions. Okay. Now let's go on to the next one. Okay. Now let's look at this. Okay. So Achyut says, what exactly is meant by body of knowledge? So there's a lot of technical components. So I will talk about this in the last 30 minutes, but there's a lot of technical knowledge that you should know. And so they're basically trying to see, do you know your technical components, as well as do you know what is the latest trend, right? So they're looking at that way of doing work. But here, this is one of those, when you look at this, the main thing is you can tell that it's very poorly executed, right? So this is where, the risk here is, if you do a portfolio like that, you get rejected right off the bat. But by good luck, if you come in, okay, and you get the opportunity to talk about this, okay, let us say there were 2 or 3 other projects and they looked at the other projects, they were really good, they looked at this, they didn't like it, they'll still call you for an interview. And then you will probably be asked questions at an execution level. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Right. So the key things that you're looking at is execution. So if you look at the problems typography, right, there are 10 plus different types of typography. There's readability issues, there are alignment issues, ratings are not discoverable, right? So these are all the problems that are there. So the kinds of interview questions that this person should expect is, let's go to the next slide. Right. So they're basically saying, are you able to execute in a timely manner? Because the biggest mistake that this person could do is, oh yeah, I was taking this boot camp and I did this and I only had 4 hours to do this, so I did it. My question is, why are you making an excuse? If you did this and you want a job that is worth like 6 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, right? And you're not even working hard for it, why should I waste my time with you? Right? There's an attitudinal issue in this individual. Right. So there is that kind of component. So there are like a lot of things that you can read between the lines here. So is this person able to plan? Have they planned for it? So obviously, when I look at it, they did not plan for it, right? So if you do a really good job, they will ask you planning questions as well. So did you plan? How did you plan? What was your roadmap, right? How were you aware of your strengths and weaknesses? So did you have partners? How did you decide partners, right? So what are you good at? What are you bad at? So those kinds of questions, ability to foresee the uncertainty. So what were the risks? What were the, how did you plan for uncertainties? The common questions are, how much time did you spend? Why were you not able to complete it? Or if you completed it, really, how much time did you spend, right? And how did you make sure you completed it in that much time, right? So for what part did you dedicate the most amount of time? Because they're trying to figure out where you're stronger, where you're weaker, right? Why is the quality compromised? Or, why is the quality different? Maybe in some parts of your project, the quality is really good. Some part, the quality is bad. So why did the quality go up or down, right? So if you do spelling mistakes, they'll obviously catch you. What was missed? What what was beyond scope? Why did you put that outside of the scope, right? What trade-offs did you make? So especially the question 5 and 6 are scope questions. I'm trying to decide, are you a senior guy or a junior person? Okay, so that is where this set of questions comes into play. So let's see. How do I know that UX design is not for me so I can move on to another career? Awesome question, right? I think UX design is the game. See, in any discipline that you go, right, you will have technical components always, even if you're doing customer service, right, which is allegedly the one with the least amount of, body of knowledge. There's still technical components that right? You need to know how to deal with your hardware. There's stuff you need to know about policies, systems, and all that stuff so that you can support the customer, right? So the simple answer I'll give is a 3-idiot answer, right? Do you enjoy this or not? Do you enjoy solving problems or not? right? Do you actually enjoy thinking of things that other people have not thought about, right? And do you have the patience to work at it again and again? Because when you're thinking new, you will fail, right? So do you just give up halfway through, or do you kind of deliver, complete it to the end, right? I think that is a bigger question. And I think this is a very nice reflective question that I would ask for everybody, because when we started our careers, there was only engineering and medicine, right? So those were the only two roles. But today in your generation, the kinds of career opportunities are available. You could literally take a phone, travel all around the world, make a video and put it on YouTube and still make money. Right. So my point is, your opportunities are way too many, right? So it's like, you have the luxury of those opportunities. So if you're enjoying it, do it. You're not enjoying it, don't do it. If you have the patience, that is where UX is the game of patience. UX is the game of failing and coming back and doing it again, right? So if you can do that, that's what this career will give you, right? You will, and this is the other thing, right? UX is probably the only field where you can travel anywhere in the world and create a career. Right? Even in the US, right? I know about 4 years ago, IBM had, Austin May, they had 2,500 design jobs open in Austin, right? And all of US, 4 years ago, all the universities in the US together, right, did not generate more than 1,000 new graduates a year. And only one company had 2,500 jobs, right? In India, if you look at it, just in Hyderabad, there are like, within my CEO group, we have the ability to absorb at least 500 jobs, 500 people a year, right? Now, if you look at all the design schools that are good, right? So, I do not see more than 250 people graduating every year, good people, right? So the point is, the career opportunities are there. The thing is, do you enjoy it? That is the question that you need to ask for yourself. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so Krati has like a really good, and this is actually one of the interview questions that I ask Krati. I say, can you tell me about a time when you did some work and you just did it? You forgot about time and you didn't get tired and you just did it. Can you tell me about a time when you did that? And that's an interview question that I ask, because then I can understand, okay, what do people enjoy? And then I can see, okay, does design match them or not? Right? Especially, this is a really good question for junior level people. If you're at a 1 + 2 years of experience, that's a different ball game altogether, right? So that's what it is. So good point, Krati. So Palak, you said, what is the trade-offs, right? Trade-offs is, okay, should I do solution A or solution B, right? What will I give? What is my advantage and what is my disadvantages? So for every solution, you should know the advantages and disadvantages, and that's what trade-offs are. Okay, good. So let's go on to the next one. So the third set of questions will basically come for something like this. Let's go to the next slide, right? So when you look at this project, okay, this is where the alignment is. This was the portfolio I presented yesterday, where, the question was, they said they would do something in the beginning, in the end, they didn't do it. They didn't deliver on it, right? So now my biggest concern will be, are they able to connect the dots? Okay, if they say that, I'm designing a product for extroverts, did they really design a product for extroverts? Okay, so that would be the question. So a lot of, the interviewer will basically look at what did you promise and what did you deliver. Beach mein, they'll forget about it. They won't even pay attention. Okay, and so then just by looking at those two, baki pura, you can pull out the whole story out of these two sets of questions. So let's go to the next slide. So here the question is, I'm basically looking at, do you have the attention to detail? Right? Do you have the mental discipline to go step by step and make sure you're solving the same problem? Do you have the clarity of thought? Okay. Now, this is something that I would like to say is like, when you think about design, right? It's like when I'm giving a little bit of a religious story, not to mean that I'm overtly religious, but when you look at Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right? Brahma creates the universe, right? When you create the universe, you have to create it with knowledge and without distractions, right? Because if because you're creating a universe where every little component has to work with each other. Okay. So the only way you can create it is when you have perfect clarity of mind and perfect mental discipline. Okay. That is how you can create this. And so that is what we look for in designers, because if you're creating products that nobody has thought about, then do you have that clarity and that mental discipline? Okay. Now, common questions are, well, how did you know that this is the correct problem to solve? right? How do you know that you have solved this problem? Okay. Now, how does one artifact, you did, let's say, this workflow and you did this final design. How are both of these connected to each other, right? Now, was this, when you did something, did you just assume this, or was there some kind of analysis behind it? Okay. Is this scalable? So if I create 10 more products or whatever, or 10 more screens, will this scale up, right? If you had to do this project all over again, what would you change? Right. So this is basically helping me understand whether you can understand all those dots or not, and you are thinking through them. Okay. So cool. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So now here's a question. Now this is also a simple, this is a task, take home task. We'll give a wireframe and we'll help you. We'll tell you to create the screen. Okay. Now somebody creates a screen. Now what questions can I ask here? Right. So let's go to the next slide. So these questions are all about point of view. Okay. Do you have a point of view? Do you have a perspective? Because see, if I bring two designers to solve the same problem, they will solve it differently. That is the truth. Okay. So I don't care whether your thought process is, is A or B. I care how you came about that thought process. What is your perspective? Okay. So I need to understand your your perspective. So the kind of questions that I will ask is, if you go to the next one, right, is this. So when I look at point of view, because again, if I bring two designers, they'll come up with different solutions. I'm looking to build a really awesome team. So I might hire a designer who's coming from a gaming background. Then I might hire a designer who's coming from the healthcare background. I might hire a designer who's basically coming from an arts background. I'll put them all together. So the question is, when you bring people with different perspectives into the team together, then will it create something unique that no other company has? Right. So this is especially for a design leader, or type 3 companies will basically be very, very particular about this. Is this person bringing a unique perspective to the table that will make my team better, that will challenge my team? Okay. So that is what I'm looking for. And so when you look at the common questions, in fact, design is the only field where design leaders are graded for diversity. Okay. So they will say, okay, how many different disciplines are your designers from? Okay. And if you say they're all engineers, then I actually get hit really badly, because they will criticize. I get criticized really badly, right? I cannot actually go talk to other design leaders and say I only hire engineers. So design leaders have to hire people from multiple disciplines to kind of create an awesome rockstar team. And so the common questions are, hey, what was your common idea? What was the theme for the project? What concept did you want to drive? How did you drive that concept, right? How is this different from other projects? Or from, what strengths did you play with? Like, why did you uniquely come up with this? Why, what is unique in this solution? How did you manage the challenges? What were the challenges that you thought about? And why should I buy it, right? So these are the questions that help me understand your unique skills. And point of view questions are particularly focused on type 3 companies, right? Type 3 companies, for them, point of view is a non-negotiable. So they will ask this and they will try to get an answer on that. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, now slide number 5 is about self-awareness and competence. So every designer will make a mistake, for sure. Okay, and no designer will come up with a perfect design on the first time. No designer will do it, right? I mean, type 3 companies know it inherently. Type 2 companies kind of still expect good design the first time around, but really, you will not be correct. That is the assumption that every design leader will have. But, do you have the self-awareness and the competence to correct yourself, right? Can you recognize that you made a mistake, and how do you fix it, right? So those are the questions that you are looking at. So they're looking at, okay, are you able to work in teams, right? Because in teams, you could have mistakes in multiple places. Now, different teams might actually give you feedback. Now, this is something that is really important, because as our work is becoming globalized, you can actually be hired. There are a number of people that I'm aware of that are working for US companies directly in India, right? So, and they're getting paid in dollars. So the point is, you have to have a common work culture. So the common work culture is generally the US work culture right now, which is, the people will give you feedback to your face, and can you handle that feedback or not, right? So this is, and then the last one is, okay, how are you enriching the environment that you're working in? So the question that they will ask you is, they will poke holes. There's a whole strategy around, people will aggressively say, no, if I was there, I would have done it this way, right? Then I'm observing, what would you do? Okay. Now, the choice is, if you're right, you should stick to your guns. If you're wrong, you should say, okay, I made a mistake, right? If you're wrong and you stick to your guns, I know you don't have self-awareness, right? If you're right and you don't stick to your guns, then I know you don't have the competence because you don't have confidence, right? So it's a very sticky and kind of a very interesting kind of a way to kind of handle these kinds of questions. So people will poke holes. It might seem that they're being very rude to you, but they're not being rude. They're really trying to understand how what your thought process is and how you're able to answer this. Are you able to argue back? Are you able to balance between taking feedback and arguing back? So the example I told of this guy, who kept saying we, and then I would basically say, and he challenged me back. I loved it. We just loved having that conversation. After that, he ended up becoming a really good friend of mine. So the next one is, how are you convincing, right? So are you able to give me a logic, or do you just get upset? Right. So that is also a big skill, because, sometimes what I see is, with senior designers who spent a lot of time in India within the Indian ecosystem, they struggle with the logic because they just came in with, they're self-taught, right? And so they don't understand the logic, they don't understand the science. And so if they can't explain it, they'll say, I just told you to do it, just do it. Don't tell me why. Right? So that is one of those things. Are you confident or overconfident? So there it's a very thin line between confidence and overconfidence. And then, are you open to discussing other possibilities? So sometimes have you thought about this? Oh yeah, that would be interesting. So the question that I'm looking at is, are you taking your design personally or not? The trick is, don't take your designs personally. You should not be attached to your work. Okay. So if somebody says, have you thought, that's a really good idea. That might work in this case, that might work in that case, right? Good. So you're not attached. So you're willing to take feedback and grow, right? So that is what you look at, the self-awareness and component and competence component. Does everybody understand this? Before I go to the last one, just type in yes if you all got this. Cool. Awesome. Good. Let's go to the last set of questions. Okay. Now, before we get there, this is one thing that I was just talking about, and I wanted to put it in a grid so you understand. Okay. This is a self-awareness grid. Okay. So either you agree with the other person's feedback or you do not agree. Right. And then you're looking on the other side where you are correct or you're not correct. Okay. If you're correct and you agree with the other person and the other person agrees with you, good. Awesome. You are on the same page. Right. If you are correct, but you do not agree, right? The other person does not agree with you, then you are in trouble, right? Because if you're not able to argue it back or discuss it, then you have lost the opportunity to convince that person. So this is where the rationale comes in place. Okay. But I'm mistaken, right? If you're correct and you do not agree to the feedback that you're given, okay, I'm a little bit confused by this, but the main thing is that if you're correct and you don't agree, then you have a challenge because you have to basically give the rationale. If you're not correct and then you basically agree, then you have lost the opportunity because the other person says you're not confident. That's a simple thing that you need to think about. And that's how companies will judge your confidence and your ability. Okay, cool. Let's go on to the next slide. So this is one thing I want you to understand when you are in the self-awareness and competence type of questions. Okay, the focus is not on winning the argument. It's about reaching a consensus with the other person. Okay, do you understand this concept? You don't have to be right. You just have to get the other person, and both of you should agree. Either you change your position or they change their position. That is the game you need to play here. Okay, cool. And then the main thing, this is also a wonderful opportunity to build a relationship. If you're not confrontational, if you don't take it personally, you build relationships with people. That's the game you play here. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Cultural questions are something that are really, really important. Okay. Cultural questions are where, it's candor, right? Are you honest? Are you upfront about it? So are you able to communicate upfront what is going on? Are you able to interact and ideate without bringing your personal feelings into it? Can you make yourself valued amongst people, right? So those are the cultural kinds of questions that you'll have. So these are the common questions that you'll have is, hey, what did you contribute, right? How did you relate to your team members? What did you achieve? What is your ideal work environment? Tell us about the time when you enjoyed working the most. Can you tell us about the time when you failed? Because, it's important. Sometimes, this is a fake out. Can you tell me about a time? Can you tell me about your weaknesses? right? And of course, the weakness is my weakness, sir, is I care too much about the client, so I spend a lot of time, right? Well, that's not really a weakness, right? So you can, now interviewers have become smart enough to understand the game that is being played, and you don't actually get credit because you're playing the game, right? So this is where you have to be very honest, very down to earth and simple, and, showcase your personality and let the company decide. Now, if you don't get the job after the cultural interview, that company was not a good fit for you. Don't take it personally, right? Because a lot of times, yeah, you are a different personality, they are a different personality. So trying to unnaturally, match the company and the individual is not a good idea. Okay, so that's where I say it will save you years of pain. If you just, culturally match Neva, thank you very much. Let's be friends. Let's go our ways. Okay, so that is what I would say when you're looking at these sets of questions. Okay, and then let's go on to the next one. Cool. So again, we have a Hire-A-Thon. Please, join us. We would love to see you. And again, it's not just UX React and NB Healthcare. There's a lot of other companies as well. And even if, again, I'm not looking at like the perfect candidate. We all realize that we are not looking at perfect candidates. We're looking for people who have a good understanding of the concepts, who are willing to learn, are humble enough to kind of get into the system, right? And then the companies also will contribute, right? So it's a two-way street. So you are kind of delivering value to the company is delivering value to you. So that's where it is. So between, so those two, because I understand a lot of you might be thinking, man, this guy has explained the perfect process. Now standard is too high. I don't think I will get selected. My argument is not really, right? I would say leave it to us, right? If you're interested, you think you have the basic skills, come on, apply, let's do this. And then at the very least, if it doesn't work, we will tell you why it didn't work and you can kind of move on to the next step, right? And, these are not the only two companies. There are a lot of other companies that are in there that are also recruiting. And for those of you that want to kind of get into some of those and there's a match, that's awesome, right? And that's what I would say is the game that we want to think about. So I would love for you guys to start applying for this program, for the hackathon, the Hire-A-Thon. Let's go on to the next slide. Right. So the 6-week practice group, again, if you're not confident, again, this is for all those people that are in the 49-51 space. If you really want to practice and stuff like that, we'll give you a bunch of tasks and then you can practice it. And then you automatically get into the hackathon and you do the tasks. Okay. And again, our intention is not to create a very, tough kind of an environment. We want it to be a kind of a respectful kind of an environment for everybody, right? So it's not that you are good or bad. Today you may not be good enough, but tomorrow you will be good if you work hard enough at it, right? So the point is, let's build a relationship. Let's kind of do this in a nice, smooth way, and then you kind of learn, and then you get into the competition. It's great. Awesome. Okay. Any questions or thoughts at this point? So let's go on to the next slide. So one other final thing that I want to basically make sure is, so do subscribe, because there's a lot of content out there for you to learn. And like we said, we put a lot of free content out there, so you can just literally learn and understand and pick it up. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So at this point, you should have understood, how to do your portfolio. You should have understood your specializations. You should have got your tips, like how to do your portfolio and all that. And then finally, how to interview and what are the questions. So if you kind of got this, just type in yes, and then we can end this. And then we will do a separate call right after this, so we can answer any residual questions. Awesome. Perfect. Good. Thank you, guys. So we had somebody, this is something that I would love for you guys to do. If you got value, I would love for you guys to, there are two things that you can do is, share your takeaways on LinkedIn, because it helps people discover, because, the thing that I kind of feel sad about is a lot of people kind of do these other programs when they don't realize there's all this stuff for free and there's all this training system and support for free. And, they come out and at the end, it's still hard to find a job, right? So please share your, share on LinkedIn, let people know that you have these resources, you have this content and the value that you got, so that other people are aware of it. Okay. Cool. So there is one question that came in from YouTube. It says, can you please suggest 5 must-read books for UX designers to improve career knowledge? Now, this is one thing I say, right? So I'm glad, how many of you will say Design of Everyday Things is a must-read? Just type in yes. My argument is that is absolutely the wrong book to read if you're starting your career, right? If you're starting your career, whoever is sharing this, can you please just go to Amazon? Yeah, we'll do that. Just go to Amazon and then we'll give the survey. Just go to amazon.com and then I want to share like 2 or 3 books that are like, these are the books that will actually change your world. Design of Everyday Things is a very vague book, how do you design a door? I mean, it is good. It gives you that higher order thinking, but it's not necessary for somebody to start their career, right? Look at Luke Reblowski. So search for Luke Reblowski. This guy I worked with, right? And this guy is like phenomenal. He wrote basically just a form design. Yeah. Okay. So this is a free PDF. This PDF book is available for free, right? If you just did a Google search, the first link was Luke's book. Okay. He did phenomenal job when you talk about web form design. Every designer, this is the minimum knowledge you need to know when you're doing web form design, right? And nobody talks about this book, right? And this you have to know minimum. Okay. So this is one book. All right. Then you have the next book. Search for User Experience by Satyam. And these books are the books that will give you the practical skills to develop, right? This is the book. So this is our book that we've kind of published that talks about how do you transform businesses, right? How do you increase the scope of thought, right? Now, this is the book where you talk about like, it's very practical, all, literally check boxes, and you have like a step-by-step description of everything, right? How do you handle it, right? Yeah, so Ramya says it's propaganda, and I won't call it propaganda. It is still good because it gets people to understand the philosophy of it, right? Before you decide you want to be a designer, you can get the philosophy there, okay? But once you decide you want to be a designer, then these are the books that are practical that get you there. Okay, now there are a lot of free content out there. So now go to UI UX patterns. Right. This is a must read for any designer that wants to get into the space. You should just basically simple thing, just click on, let's say, navigation. Right. And there's so many designers that don't even know, right? So for example, if I want to do navigation where I want to jump hierarchy, there are breadcrumbs, fat footers, notifications, modal, and these are like still outdated. This is outdated by about 10 years, but still there's a lot of valuable content in there. So click on, let's say, breadcrumbs. Right. Scroll down. These are all free resources, right? You scroll down, you literally tell you this is the pattern. This is when you use it. Here are other examples of how you do this. You get so much knowledge, right? You don't have to duplicate everything. Now, the other one that I've been talking about is UI8. If you UI number 8.com. Right. I think that's it, or .net. I don't know. Let's see. Right. Oh, it's .net. UI number 8.net. Yeah, hit enter. Let's see. Yeah. If you want to be a visual designer, right, and you are just starting off your career, and this is what I say, right, forget all the other bullshit, right? Just literally take this and start practicing build screens with this, right? Your life will change. You don't have to basically, go and do lots of other stuff, right? These are just basic 3 or 4 things that will jumpstart your career. You can, and all you have to do is do this, like, 4 महीने में आपको जॉब ऑफर आ जाएगा, आराम से आ जाएगा. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. I'm also going to talk about the other one. So let's go to, can you actually open the screen again and share this one other thing? Go to college.com. Right. Go to Learning Center. right? So we have resources for companies also, how to hire and all that. Don't worry about it. Look at your free resources for designers. Go to free resources. We basically put in a bunch of resources, but scroll down, right? We have put in like there are only a limited number of topics you need to learn. Her topic, we have listed it and put it up there for you. There is no mystery here, right? You just go one after the other, you just master. So for example, heuristic evaluation. By the way, heuristics is just one type of evaluation. There are at least about 15 to 20 different types of evaluations. Okay. But I just use heuristics because the most common, this is what you're most familiar with, right? So click on heuristic evaluation. Right. Content hai udhar bas. Don't worry about it. Just read the content and that's it, and practice it, right? And that's what I do. All of this content is free. Uske upar the training program that is there, those are the portfolio builders. You just basically do this, practice it, get feedback, and you build your portfolio. That is the game here, right? So this content is available. Now go back to the learning center. Right. So what we have done, if you want to do interaction, the fundamentals you have to do anyways. Okay. Then what are the fundamentals for interaction design? So design patterns, form design, UI states, all that stuff, right? And there are core elements that you need to do, right? So this is when you get really good. So just go from left to right and follow the content, and or kuch bhi nahi hai, right? Uske upar, if you want to do something else, it's all advanced. But if you want to do AR, VR, artificial intelligence, everything is based on this. So if you build your foundation strongly, the ability to learn UX is done easy. Okay. So let's go to visual design track. Same thing I've defined. So you will notice that some of these components are same from interaction design, but that is what it is. So the common components, interaction, visual, everybody has to learn, right? So research ke liye we also have content, but that is all on YouTube. We don't have content here. That's why we didn't put it here. We have to update it. But research, I have done a whole workshop on research, for 3-day workshop on research, how to do. But anyways, here you have the fundamentals, essentials, and core. Then go to tools. So tools is the one thing I will say is outdated. So now the whole market environment has changed. Earlier, when we wrote this, it was UX Spin and Sketch Basics. That's what we recommended. Now we are basically going into Figma. So we will be creating new content for Figma and we'll be sharing that. So I would say ignore the tool component for now, but interaction and visual tracks, usko follow karo. You can't go wrong. You can build your career. Everything else is more Maya. Okay, cool. So awesome. So we can stop this here. I will jump. Everybody jump off. You can, if you want to head off, that's great. You know, we had a great 3 days and I really love the kind of questions and the kind of challenges you gave me. So I love it. But if you have some more questions, we will restart this and then, you know, get back into the waiting room and then we can answer all the remaining questions for you. Okay. Because my goal is like, you know, you just I want to make sure that you're stepping away with 0 doubts from this session. Cool. Thank you guys. Rejoin if you're interested. Bye. Krati was laughing when I said Momaya.
Actually, it is.
Only the Hindi speaking guys will appreciate that. Okay, should we start?
So there are only 4 people.
There's 64 people. What are you talking about? 59 people.
Oh, sorry. Just give me 1 second. I'm streaming it live. We are whenever you say live, we are going to go live.
Yeah, live. Okay, guys. So ask your questions. Happy to answer. Go ahead, Simran.
Hey, Prasad. Firstly, I really enjoyed these 3 days. It was really informative and I loved it. I just have a question on what you just spoke before the call ended about various methodologies to evaluate apart from heuristics. So could you probably talk about a few if you don't mind?
Okay. So I can definitely talk about that, but it's actually there's a very beautiful article that I saw on Medium where they talked about like 25 different methods. So is it okay if I find it and share it with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. These guys did like a way better job than even I can do. So I'll share it and we'll put it on the WhatsApp group as well as the YouTube thing.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Cool. So Krati, you have to turn on your camera. I don't take questions from people who don't turn on cameras. Okay, go ahead. So you are on mute, I guess.
Yeah. Am
Yeah.
I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first question is, if I did my day one task today, so will I be considered considerable into the certificate plus the portfolio evolution?
So it's you have to do all three, right? You have to do day one, day two, as well as put on LinkedIn.
But I completed the day one later on.
Okay. So should you get a certificate?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
No,
ask.
I'm asking you. So should you get a certificate? Because design is always about discipline, right? So it's a
I
professional.
skipped. Yeah, that's my mistake. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay with whatever is the protocol. Another question is the regarding the interview again. So I had this interview going on with the company, and I just today evening I got rejected for the same company. I had interview. I asked the earlier question regarding I and we thing. So one thing I had on my mind that was the reason I got rejected. Another
What is
thing
I
is,
and V?
like we spoke in the earlier half an hour session that I was addressing myself, my project as we. So I thought that they rejected me because I was talking about we as I was explaining, giving presentation of my portfolio as we.
Right, right,
So one that is done. Another thing is like yesterday's
So one other
presentation.
thing, Krati, for that question, right? I and we may not. What would happen is what you can say is this you can say what was the team composition? How many people were there? Okay. So upfront only you can say, Dekho, there were so many people in the team. These were the responsibilities, and this was what I was looking after.
Yes, I did explain them. I don't know, but I did explain the whole process and the whole approach. But anyways, another thing I wanted to ask that yesterday in presentation, you told us the list of do's and don'ts. So in don'ts, you told one thing that don't be rigid about the process towards in your portfolio. So the interviewer himself was rigid about one thing that I don't want to got into the depth because it was an academic project. It was not being executed. But since he was being very much going into the depth of the thing, so at the end of the our whole conversation, although the conversation went good, overall interview, but the end of the concluding it up, I asked him back about the same question that he was asking me. So although he nearly answered my question, but at the end of the interview, he was a bit off with me. So I shouldn't have asked him back or what?
Some people don't like to be challenged.
Okay, so we should not do that in interviews.
But my argument is, Dekho, I mean, if you want to get into a type 3 company, we love being challenged, right? We love it when somebody basically, I mean, I love it when, you know, how people were asking, you said this, but now what about this, right? I love it because when you challenge me, it tells me that you're thinking about what I'm telling you. Okay. So that is a, you know, type 3 mindset, right? So the thing that you have to think about is this. Eventually, you want to go into a type 3 company, correct? Right. So if you get into a company where you're not trained to challenge your boss or not trained to think outside the box and all that, and you lose that skill, because I mean, anybody given enough criticism will lose that skill, right? Then after that, you've lost the skill. So how can you now apply for type 3? Because you cannot demonstrate it, isn't it? So that is something that you have to be aware of. So it's, you know, of course, it is your first job. I would never tell you to not take your first job, right? Take it. But you should always maintain your curiosity, and you should always have a group of friends with whom you can have those kinds of discussions, right? And you should always keep that mindset alive. Even if your current boss is not supporting it, you should keep that alive.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
But
Thank you
yeah,
so
I
much.
mean, unfortunately, yeah, that is the truth. This person maybe did not like you questioning them. Okay.
Okay. No, it's just my assumption. Maybe I would have been wrong at some other points. Maybe that was my assumption that I was being rejected on these terms. Maybe
Yeah,
that was
maybe.
my
And I think
assumption.
there's no harm in basically reaching out to the individual and say, listen, and this is something that I encourage everybody that is interviewing, is right after it is done, you send a thank you note and say, thank you very much. I know I'm rejected. I really appreciate your time and your energy, right? Is there any advice you can give me so I can become better?
Yeah, I did that on LinkedIn. I texted him the whole that
Great.
what were my wrong areas
Uh, uh,
I was lacking behind.
uh. That's awesome.
But
You
we
did
got
your
it.
part, right? And it's not, आता है नहीं आता है वो आपके हाथ में नहीं है. आपने अपना question पूछ लिया. That's good enough. Good job.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Cool. Go ahead, Achyut.
Yes, sir. So my question is from yesterday's and also today's session. Like it was also covered in the initial stage of the question. So one thing that you have mentioned was you can upgrade somebody's skill set, but you cannot teach them the thought process. I was a little afraid when you said that, because when the scope of thought matrix was there, I mean the graph was there, I yesterday sat down and evaluated, and also from one of my friend, I've taken a feedback and a critique, and I understood that during doing a heuristic evaluation, I'm more based on the my thought process was more based on UI and screens.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know, how do I progress from screens to user experience gradually? What are the ways and what should I do? And another thing is, considering how India is with regards to UX design, how the companies are in terms of maturity in understanding UX design, and from what I've personally received from these 3 days, how can I contribute to take this knowledge further? I wanted to know, so that it was really helpful for me. I thought this is the content where it has to be. So what can I do to contribute from
See,
mine?
we have a very simple skill test, right? Your last was set 5 thana, which is self-awareness and competence, right? That is what it is. If you have self-awareness and competence, you can increase your scope, no problem, right? So because you are aware and you know that this is where I want to go and I'm here, you are aware, right?
Yes.
And you're not rigid, right? So the interesting thing is, the more competent you become, the more you realize there is to learn outside.
Of course.
So it is that humility, right? So it is, you have that humility. So essentially, what if you have that self-awareness and that competence mindset, okay? You're humble enough to say, okay, I'm going to learn more. Okay. Whereas there are a lot of people that I've seen where, there will be people who will come to me and complain, why am I not getting promoted this year? They will get angry, upset with you that they're not getting promoted, right? And the reason they are not getting promoted is they are doing their job really well, right? But they are not doing the next level job, right? They are not showing me that they can go to the next level, right? So for example, this is what it is. The biggest fallacy, if you look at some of the largest companies, like all the big companies, right? They have this understanding. A good individual contributor does not make a good manager, right? Or maybe let me rephrase it. A good individual contributor is not necessarily a good manager, right? So what that basically means is, when you're an individual contributor, you're trained to do all the stuff by yourself, but you're doing it really well, right? Now, when you're a manager, what is your job? Right?
Be able to
if I micromanage all my people to do A, B, C, and D, I say, these skills have got me promoted, so I'm going to make you only those skills, do only those skills. What happens? You're killing your team, because unless the team is a duplicate, a Xerox copy of you, the team is not good, right? Whereas a good manager is basically saying, okay, you might know things that I don't know. So let me encourage you on that. I will also learn, you'll also learn, right? So that's a manager. You're managing people is very different from knowing your skill, correct? Now, the same thing, a good manager may not necessarily be a good strategist. Right? Because if you're managing people versus managing business, it's a completely different skill set.
Right.
है ना? So it is very important for people to realize that, okay, I'm good at my level, but if I want to get good at the next level, I have to let go of everything I've learned and learn new tricks.
Right.
And that is the biggest challenge for people, because they cannot let go of it. They don't grow in their career.
Right. Right.
So at the end of the day, it just basically boils down to just maybe 3 alphabets: ego. Right? If your ego gets too big, it stops you from learning. Once you stop learning, you're not growing in your career. That's it.
Yes, sir. So, and another thing, sir, I actually did not get any link yesterday. Was I supposed to get any form or survey yesterday? Because in the initial video, there was some submission. I did not get any email.
You did not get any email.
I mean, was there any email sent yesterday also? Because day before yesterday, I got.
Yeah, so you should have received an email if you finished the second assessment, which is the assessment of scope of thought. Did you finish the scope of thought assessment?
Yes, scope of thought assessment was done.
Then you should have received an email. Check your spam or...
I've checked the spam also, but I haven't received any email as such.
So then just send your email address to Rajiv, and then Rajiv can look it up.
Can I, okay, here itself, right? Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Go ahead, Ankur. You're on mute.
Hi.
Hey, Ankur.
Hi, sir. First
Hey.
of all, thanks a lot that you are doing everything for us for free gradually. And my question is little bit,
Could you just introduce yourself very quickly? So I'd love to know, because I know Simran and I know Achyut has also introduced himself, but
sure.
this is the first time we're talking. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. But I've been I'm one of your oldest audience in this channel.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. All right. So I based in Ahmedabad, working as a UI/UX designer, but like lot of other designer, I'm like a master of one, and like doing a lot of things together. Like in my organization, I'm doing graphics as well as video editing, video shoot. Along with that, I'm developing application as well for them. So basically, I have done diploma in animation, and then after I am self-taught UX designer. But the things that you have, explained in last 2 days is really, I didn't find anywhere in last 2 years of my journey that I could conclude with. And in my experience, what are the, there are tools and tutorials there to learn, but how should we prepare our brain to observe all that knowledge? Like how we can improve our learning curves to observe all this knowledge? Like in any tip for the same in your experience?
So how many years of experience did you say you have?
I have over 8 years of experience, and since last 8 months, I have switched into UI UX.
Got it. See, I think the simple thing is practice and know that you will be wrong 100% of the time when you do your work, at least for the first 5, 6, 7 times. Okay. The next thing is find a good mentor, right? Who will basically hold you accountable, right? And then you basically keep doing work, keep getting critiques, keep getting feedback and all that stuff. And eventually you will get to the other side.
Right.
Right. And the easiest way for you to transition is because you are an animation guy. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of people realize this, but AR and VR is the next generation of design, right? So visual designers, graphic designers are not the guys who are going to do that. It's animation guys that are going to be doing that, right? So you already have a critical advantage for the next evolution, right? But what you need to do now is, 3-4 mahina, you just have to stay focused and build up your knowledge and build up your critique and build up your professionalism. Because again, this is where I would say, right? So if you say I've got 8 years of experience, now I go to UI UX, okay? Now, you might have financial obligations, you will have family obligations, all kinds of stuff, right? So now when you start over, you can't take a pay cut to do it, right? So what you need to do is you need to basically create a bridge to the new ecosystem. So the way you do it is while you're in your same job, okay? This is where, this is the intensive, unfortunately, is one of the best programs for you, right? Which this year, 2023 is already full. It's only open in 2024. But you can probably join the Portfolio Builder series and that might actually get you going. So, usme, what you really need to do is this, right? take a certain skill, practice it, put it into your work environment, right? Practice those skills in your work environment.
All right.
Okay. The more you practice it, you learn the professionalism and the mindset, and you're good to go. Okay. In fact, one of the skills that I teach everybody is something called minutes of meetings. Okay. So whenever a meeting is done, you write a minutes of meeting and you send it to everybody in your team, right? What happens is within a month or 2 months, right, the team starts looking to you and says, okay, Ankur, tell me what we should do. What did we decide? They will look to you for advice, right? So this is what I mean is this, that's the whole mindset is like, this is what is, you need to learn these skills and apply it at your work so that you are basically doing a really good job. You are doing UX in a UI job. And so dhire dhire, once you do more and more UX, now you can easily transition and you can always say, I've got 2 years of experience. That's fine. The new company will take you, no problems. And you won't even have a pay cut.
All right.
Okay. In fact, I would be surprised if you don't get a hike in salary, because if you're already applying everything, you know how it is. Either automatically आपको hike मिलेगा and आपको कोई negative नहीं है.
Yep.
Cool.
Agree. Yeah, experience was quite identical what you have just said. Thanks a lot.
Right, right. And again, you know, this is where you can talk to people. We have 2 of our members here. Bhaskar is there, Mohan is there. So, hey, if you can just raise your hands, they've got their cameras on. You can talk to them. They were exactly in a similar kind of situation, right? So that's what I would say. You know, this is the other thing that I would say is become a member of the college ecosystem, because then you get access to everybody. You can talk, you have conversation, you're supported on that.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And
Awesome.
Ankur, I am also a motion graphics artist related to animation. So if you want to know the more information further, you can connect with me.
Sure. We'll connect soon. Yeah. Thanks, Mohan. Yeah. Thanks
Yeah,
again. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Go ahead then. Yeah.
Hi,
Yes.
my name is Denzel. This is my first time here. So I've been subscribed for a while, but now just this email came up and I am looking for new opportunities and all those things. I said, okay, let me see what it is. So first 3 days, it's totally unique approach. So I think you package all. I think there were very few people who kind of guide UX designers into this kind of thing. So it was very insightful, even though I am 12 plus years of experience. And plus, I didn't get the questions, the scope of thought questionnaire. I missed that.
So it was given, it was shared on the WhatsApp group as well as it was shared in the.
And then WhatsApp group.
So you probably would have missed it because pretty much everybody else accessed it, WhatsApp and Discord. Those are the 2 places where it was there.
Yeah, I had a link, then I was trying to do it and something came up and then I had to drop off.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Yeah, so I saw something popping up and then I missed it. And then today I'm seeing that, okay, everybody's answered. So basically, I also want to figure things out. So what happened is, I've been I've been heading a team of design, a year back. So I worked in a firm for 5 years. So after this session only, I came to know there are type 2, type 3, and all the sort of companies. I wanted to work. I've been to UK to study, and then there was something happened, then came back. A lot of things. So had a very different approach. But then somehow, life and everything takes different directions, and then so I somehow managed whatever I have. So I joined as an art director, then moved as a senior UX UI designer. Then I had a team of people. Then Corona time was amazing. We did a lot of things in terms of transitioning people, recruiting people, working remote was the biggest challenge.
Right.
Had I knew what kind of questions you asked today, I would have got a better team. So that was very insightful. But just still managed. But I had a very interesting team wherein I picked up people from various art backgrounds, like what you said, to head different stuff, Plus, my firm did not have, UX UI group and all. So we were just anybody who used to do anything. So I kind of took control and gave basis the skill of the person, kind of identified, and there was a set of UX team and there was a UI team. So then you were talking about, we should not have the segmentation. It should be there's no UI guy. I was a bit confused, like why you were saying there was no UI, related thing. Especially I used to give them UI job wherein the UX guy focused on thinking. And so basically it was more like a production job once you kind of think. So I did more of a web related project rather than the apps thing, not much of a product. But yeah, so that kind of thing. So now what happened is like, so I took a break, doing freelancing. So now I want to get back into the game. So what happens is, since I was heading the team and all those things, so most of the work is it's a teamwork. Okay, I'm not sure where the portfolio comes from. So not many people, show portfolio in this level. I'm not sure. Do we even want to show a portfolio? Okay, so how do I go about it?
So I think there is still a portfolio. For leaders, there is still a portfolio.
Okay.
In fact, one of the best portfolio presentations I saw was from this guy who was a senior director at Boston Consulting. Okay. And he then was looking for senior leadership roles in other companies.
Okay.
His work was phenomenal. It's just his portfolio was like mind-blowing, right? Because again, when you're looking at a senior level, what are the things that people are judging you on? Right?
It's more like how I help the team, what are the
not
production,
really,
how
right?
I made the goals.
So I am judging you on everything.
Okay.
Right? So I'm judging you as an individual contributor because I want to make sure that you know your job. Right? Then I'm judging you as a leader of the team, right? Which is, how are you giving feedback? What systems and processes have you set up, right? How are you promoting people, kicking out people? What is your system? What is your framework? So I would love to understand your frameworks, right? Then when I'm looking at you as a director level person, right? I want to understand what strategies you've implemented. How are you connecting your strategy to the business goals, right? How are you governing those goals?
Okay.
Right. So that is where I'm looking at the next level. So all of these have to be communicated, right? However, you may not want to put it online because when you are a senior level person, not everything can be put online, right?
Yes, that's
but
what I was
what
like.
you will
Nothing is
probably
online.
do is you will put all of this as a presentation and you will present it.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah.
Okay. And you'll say, listen, here's an example of how I lead my team. So this is my structure. This is my framework. This is what I look. This is how I hire.
Yeah.
This is how I fire. This is how I promote, right? This is how I achieve my business goals. And then you kind of talk through all of that. So now people are able to evaluate you at multiple levels. You know? And that makes it really well. So, and it also tells me that you are diligent enough to think about what I'm trying to understand from you, and you're telling me that. You know?
Okay.
So if somebody is going at a senior level, they don't really have a presentation, right? They will it's practically next to impossible to kind of get into a type 3 company.
Yeah, because for me, it was not making sense to kind of put up all the work and show about it because this is not something they are going to look at. It's about how do we conduct, I cannot show, like I've seen many people's portfolio, they just put up this screenshot and make a nice layout, but it was not making, a valid approach for me.
Yeah, and again, your portfolio has to match the seniority of job that you're looking for.
Yeah. So, so then I was trying to look for, okay, let me go for, senior UX or maybe lead UX. So I don't know. Then
so at lead UX, you have to do your portfolio, but when you're going at manager and senior manager roles, you have to play it a little bit delicately. Okay.
Yeah, so
because
it's a bit tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky. It's definitely tricky. But what I would say is, here's my, my body of work, and your resume becomes more important. More than your portfolio, resume becomes more important when you're going into senior roles. Okay. And the way you write your resume makes a difference in terms of how people, will select or not. So your resume should be completely outcome driven. Right? Like, what are the outcomes that have driven for my organization? And I think that is where people will look at you.
So basically what happened, I've transitioned towards it. So I have I was the individual contributor, then I was a team player, then was leading the team. So there's a whole story in the last 5 years, and there's a lot. So even the work is a lot because I was working in a service company. There's a huge domain. I've worked multiple domains. I've worked in. So it becomes a little overwhelming when I look at it, and I do not know how do I place me. So also I was thinking about it is a good thing to transition to a product company at this point of time, and what level should I be getting into?
See, my preference always is going to companies where you are accountable to outcomes. Right? don't go into companies where you are accountable to number of screens, number of pages. And generally, I see, like, with the exception of UX Reactor, because UX Reactor is different because both Satyam and I are purely product guys who have created a service company, right? So we actually do product. So when we go into a company, we take over the design function in that company. Otherwise, we don't even work with them, right? So, but most service companies that I've realized are not like that, because usme service mein ye, you throw the money and naach dekho, right? Paisa feko, naach dekho, right? So that's what it is. So there is no respect. So the service companies may, product companies say, I have this idea, you deliver it. You give me 40 screens. Even if the designer knows it is wrong, they will do those 40 screens. They will give it. Then the company will say, okay, these 40 screens are there, but we made a mistake. Now do 20 more. Okay, I'll charge more hours. I'm going to do 20 more. So that never teaches you the strategic thought process when you're working in those kinds of companies, right? So product companies, because you're held account, product companies has more money, more scope, and more experimentation, and more, in terms of the knowledge you get is much more, right? So, but when you want to get into product companies, you have to, it's a higher bar that you have to meet, right? So that is also way, and again, I'm not saying one or the other is bad, but that's the other aspect that you think about, right? So if you want to go into a service company, you don't have any knowledge, right? Service companies will be more willing to teach you and grow you, right? The salaries will be lower, but but that's where I say for you, you have to commit to at least 2 or 3 years to that company, right? Otherwise, the company will not make a profit. So if you give those, you say, I'm willing to put 3 years, I'm going to get my break, and I'm going to learn. And you go learn there. Service company is a great place to start your job, right? Product companies mein ye hota hai ki either you have pedigree or you know what you're doing, you kind of get into it, right? So the pedigree opens the door for you. So that is where product companies, that's how they go for it, right? So product companies will not waste time teaching you and training you, right? They'll say, okay, ho raha hai to ho raha hai, nahi ho raha to nikal do, hire somebody else. So it's a very different mindset.
So that's what I was thinking. So my dilemma was, where should I go in service route? Because now I've done into multiple route. Now I want to focus in a product company. So where is the entry in the product?
Again, with me, it's interesting. Very rarely will you find a perfect answer with me, because again, I don't know you, right? What I'm really afraid of is I give you the wrong advice and you make a wrong choice.
No, I mean, not that level to kind of, just say what is it. It's just I'll evaluate with
so my preference always is product companies, because I've had the most amount of phenomenal growth in I've loved product companies, right? Service companies, I struggle with, right? I struggle with service. Even setting up UX Reactor, I struggled with it until we made the rule that we are taking over your design function. Otherwise, we are not working with you, right? Until then, I always struggled with service companies. So that's what my thing is. So, go for a place where you are accountable for outcomes, your growth will be great, and the amount of fun you'll have.
I actually love that. And what happened in certain project, I have done that approach wherein I have taken ins and out of it. So, but what happened is not every client is the same, right? So they don't give you that opportunity to kind of, take everything out from us. So, so I had the opportunity to work with ICICI Prudential, a mutual fund website. So we did that entire thing. Amazing challenges, a lot of insights into the team. So I kind of like that approach. But then I would like, okay, been there, done that. So I want to do something next. So the product is more, but then with the kind of, how do I place is the bigger question. So everybody say, okay, you are a senior UI UX designer, and then I don't want to be, designing, but I want to lead team and kind of, see how
I mean, make your plan, your portfolio accordingly, plan your communication accordingly, build your networks, and basically go nail them. That's the game you need to play. Right? Cool. Awesome.
Right,
Shrikar, no camera. Aakhri minute mein camera on kiya to kaise I'm going to have a complaint with you, man. Go ahead, Shrikar.
Good evening, Prasad. So I have a question. So considering the current job scenario in India, specifically to UX design, I have a question. So, I mean, UX design is still in its early stages in India, right? So my question is, I mean, if you look at the current market, it's unable to understand what exactly UX design is, right? So I just want to give a context or share a story where one of my relatives named Aditya, who is a talent acquisition lead in a company. So he was trying to, recruit a UX designer or UX talent, right? So I have identified their need as a recruiter. So they were actually, about to start a project on food wastage. So they were trying to recruit a UX talent. So I mean, on a higher level, if you look at the different personas involved in a UX, I mean, as a recruiter, we have talent acquisition lead, we have a human resource manager, and we have hiring manager and a design team. So at the end of the day, a design team or a design lead should be making a decision, right? So as to acquire a design talent. So I mean, the problem he shared with me as a talent acquisition lead was that he was unable to identify the standard or the right UX recruitment process, right? So on a higher level, my question is this: are recruiters in India able to differentiate between the recruitment process and the hiring process? So because the difference between the hiring process and the recruiting process is that hiring process that where they want to fill a job vacancy immediately, but the recruitment process that they want to find the right talent that needs to be fulfilled, right? So he was, I said that, okay, we have a community like college where you can find the appropriate resources, not only for the designers, but also for the recruiters. But yeah, so, I mean, yeah.
See, that's always a challenge between recruiters and hiring managers, right? So because recruiters want to fill a headcount, hiring managers want to find the best person.
Right.
Okay. So that is where, in any team that you will see, if you have a good hiring manager, they will challenge the recruiter to hire better. They will actually do training programs for the recruiter on how to hire, right? They will actually, once they reject somebody, they will sit down with the recruiter and say, I rejected this person for this reason, this reason, this reason. Okay. So the recruiter is learning from that process.
Right.
Okay. So, but again, even within recruiter, even the hiring manager can make their whole recruitment process a lot easier, because they can say, look for this, they can give guidelines on what they're looking for. Because a lot of times I also see hiring managers don't know how to write a clean JD. Right. So it's funny because I don't know if it's true or not, but in LinkedIn, this has been trending. Flipkart published a JD with Atlassian in it. Right. So like it may be false, maybe it's a fake news, right? But the point is, those kinds of situations happen, right? Because the hiring manager will just go and copy and paste a JD from somewhere and put it there. They have not thought about it, what kind of person they want. And then they'll just put it out there, and then, you'll find inconsistencies in the JD, and then it'll not look good. Right. So that's what it is. So, I would just say that, yes, hiring and recruiting are two different roles, and both of them usually coordinate very, very tightly together to get a job hired, especially in the higher type 2 and the type 3 companies. In fact, in type 3 companies, they are willing to pay a premium to, recruit the correct kind of people. So, I mean, if you look at it, type 3 companies, if you look at Microsoft, Google and all that, like just go on YouTube, how much content they create just to attract the right kind of people. Right? Because they basically have an attraction strategy going on. Even this whole event that we're doing is an attraction strategy. Right? So that's what it is. So you invest in a lot more beyond just hiring.
Got it. Cool. So, yeah, if I may ask.
Okay.
So on a higher level, the recruitment process of UX design is not standardized in India, right? Not only in India, but all over the globe. It's not standardized. So, how do we start with this, or who would be the first person to standardize the recruitment process all over the globe?
See, in any type 3 company, the senior directors will be setting standards for their discipline in their organization. Okay, they will have very clear-cut roles. They'll say, okay, for an individual contributor, these are the skills. This is what they should know. This is what they should not know. To get promoted, so the whole progression chart is done by the directors in their appropriate disciplines. Okay, in type 3 companies, you'll have interaction, visual, research. So you'll have 3 different directors. In higher type 2 companies, you might have one director who's managing all 3. So, but still, they still have to do these progression charts. Okay. Now, what they do is, once these progression charts are done, these progression charts are now connected to the hiring criteria and to the hiring task. Everything is connected. Okay, so that is how these companies will basically run it. And so that's exactly what we do when we do the free resources for companies. In fact, this is what I say. For us, for our members to get hired, there are enough type 3 companies to get hired in. Right? So we don't even have to waste. And this is a very interesting mindset. So when we created UX Reactor, we made a very conscious decision, because if I can do a lot of business in India, but I have to educate people on what is UX. Right? Or I can do a lot of business in US and Europe, and I don't have to educate because they know what they want. Right? So what did we do? We said, okay, forget the Indian market. We completely left the Indian market, and we said we are only going to focus on the US market. And of course, we are a US headquartered company, so that's a different, motivation altogether. But we would every once in a while get offers from Indian companies and say, no, we don't want to work in India, because I don't want to waste 10 hours of my time teaching you what UX is, then teaching you why I'm important, then teaching you all these things, and then do the project for you. It's a waste of my time, unless you're paying like $200 an hour to teach you. Right. So my question is, like, why even worry about that business that doesn't know, right? I mean, how many people do you have to teach? And by the time you teach those people, then they leave and go to a new job. And then again, you're back to zero with this company.
Right. So, but I mean, isn't there a scope of opportunity where we'll not only be educating job seekers about the right recruitment process, but also the recruiters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of events for companies as well.
Okay.
Right. We do events for companies where companies come in and they learn and all that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, your brother has joined one of the companies that we've educated and trained.
Right.
Right.
True.
So their CEO is like, we trained them and kind of onboarded them and all that. So that's how it works.
Right. Got it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Go ahead, Sanjay.
Yes. Hi, sir. So, what's my question was, yesterday I asked about the web accessibility.
About web accessibility.
Yeah.
Right. So the question was, how do we learn web accessibility? Is that right?
Yes. And how to apply that thing.
Right.
Because
so web accessibility, if you go to a website called usability.gov.
Yeah.
Okay. So usability.gov, it's a US government website, because the US government and both the US government as well as the European Union have accessibility guidelines, and they have laws that you have to meet if you want to do, if you want to work with the government, right?
Yeah.
Or if you want government money. So there is that. And there's also that accessibility.gov, I think, is another one, which is a website. So they will give you a lot of content, and there are accessibility tools. So after you do the website, you basically run it into those tools, and then you will get feedback on that. Okay. So there are what you call, I think it's 508 laws or whatever. It's 508 guidelines or something like that it's called. I can probably put it in later at some point. I can search for it. But yeah, so there are resources out there that you can just literally go there, and there are tools that will validate your design, and then you can go get going on that.
Okay. Okay. And another question was, I just started.
And so then is also kind of put in there the WCAG guidelines. So these are guidelines, and these are also really good resources. So there are legal requirements that you have to meet, and there are guidelines that, if you meet, they're good. So the WCAG guidelines are literally the gold standard for, in terms of guidelines of these are all the things you need to think about. And then you go into those other websites, they'll kind of talk to you about the legal elements.
Okay. So I have another
So thank
question.
you. Yeah, go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah. So yesterday I want to talk about the zone stagnation. So from past 1 month, I had a warning notice in my company. So it's been just 1 year. I just started in a fresher. So when I joined as an intern, after 6 months, I completed my internship, and they only given the opportunity to work with them. So now when just recently some few things happened in the thing. So they are saying they need to be improve the things like kind of sentence cases. So is there any best practices for when need to be used the sentence cases and when should not use the title cases?
See, I think there are probably two things that are there.
Okay.
So there are guidelines, of course, when do you use different sentence cases and all that. There are guidelines that you can basically just search for it and you can probably get it. However, right, there are two reasons why companies will basically give you that kind of feedback, right?
Okay.
One is attention to detail.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Right.
If the individual doesn't have the attention to detail, let's say you use one sentence case somewhere, another sentence case somewhere else, right? It's attention to detail, because when you're coding, when your engineer is coding, they're writing CSS that says sentence case this, camel case, or sentence case something else, right? So they're writing the code that way so that one line of code can automatically take care of everything.
Okay.
Right? So when you are inconsistent, the engineers have to write more code.
Right.
Or even when some box is like 1 pixel left, one box is 1 pixel right, you're not consistent. So the engineering will basically complain, because in Indian organizations, engineering is very strong. Okay. So engineering will go back and complain to product or the business and say, yeah, this guy is wasting my time. There's nothing consistent. I have to go back and ask 10 times this question, and then that's how it gets done. Right.
Okay.
Or, the engineering gets caught. Why did you not do this? The engineering will promptly blame design.
Okay. Right.
Okay. So attention to detail and consistency are absolutely critical skills for a designer. And that only comes through practice. You have to practice it, and you have to have that mindset, zero error mindset.
Yep.
Right. And it basically is like, one of the exercises that we do in our training is something, what we do is we give negative marks. We say you automatically have 100 marks. And we will do negative marks for every mistake that you do. Right. And it's -1, -1, -1. And the highest marks is a -5,000 we have given up to that much.
Okay.
Right. But once you understand all the mistakes, then you narrow it down. You don't make mistakes. You're technically very strong.
Okay.
Right. Now, the second use case might be that they are potentially looking at you as a content guy as well. You are supposed to develop the content as well. Right.
Okay.
In which case, then, if your content is not your strength, then that's not your strength. You can't, developing content is not it's a separate specialization in itself.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Right. And you need to have that conversation with your managers, like, guys, this is what, and if your boss says, no, I want a content plus designer and everything else all in one, then good luck, right? I just say start looking for a new job. Don't worry about this, because you're not missing much here. Right? Because no matter who they hire, they'll have to deal with the same issue. Because it's very hard to find a one-man army. Think about it, right?
Yes.
So it's an unrealistic expectation from the job.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Cool?
Yeah. And I have another one last question.
Okay.
When would need to be the information architecture has been applied? Is it in static sites or in dynamic thing?
See, again, by information architecture, I assume you're talking about that tree structure, right? Which page connects to what? Right. In static.
Okay. Thanks.
Right. You never do it in dynamic. If you're doing dynamic projects, you do that, somebody's going to give you dirty looks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you a lot. I learned a lot in 2 days.
Awesome. Thank you, Sanjay. I'm glad you found value. Go ahead, Abdul.
Hi, sir. Thank you for giving me opportunity to ask questions. Actually, my name is Salman, sir. I'm a UX designer working in a product-based company based in Delhi. So I have experience around 5 years in UX, you can say. So, sir, my question is, actually, my background is accounting. So I came into design industry. So my question is, is it really necessary to have a design degree to get selected in type 3 company?
The correct answer is no, but normally when type 3 companies will be recruiting, they will go to design colleges, right? They're the ones that give those insane packages, and they will say, Dekho, I want to hire.
Right.
Right. And that is how they basically go about hiring. So if you look at the Microsoft, but then even if they go to an IIT Delhi or IIT Mumbai or whatever, right? They're not making blanket offers. Most of the time they will make maybe one offer or zero offers.
Yes. Yes.
So they are very, very particular. They will not compromise. Even as far as UX Reactor is concerned, what we have done is we've blacklisted all IITs and NIDs. We will not go and hire from there, right? Because where we find the issue is self-reflection is a skill that is very much lacking in those programs. Because what happens if you're IIT, I rule the world. That is what you're trained from day one, right? Now, if you come to a company and say, bhai, you can't do this, you have to do it in another way. Those guys cannot compute that logic, right? They say, no, I'm IIT, how can I be wrong, right? So, I mean, I'm not complaining about ideas, but I'm complaining about that attitude, right? The attitude that you can never be wrong. If you're never wrong, then how will you reflect? How will you grow? How will you improve in your career, right? And so that is the same philosophy with Microsoft and all that. When they go there, they will select for that. That is why they only select 1 or 0, right? So they will be very, very careful in identifying that cultural elements and they will pick up those people. So coming back to your question, okay. Getting a degree definitely helps you open the door, right? And getting degree in the right colleges. Now there are like every university is opening programs, right? That's a waste of time, right? Getting into the right institutions will open doors for you. Okay. However, you are still responsible for learning your skills. Even within our community, we have a number of people from NID, we have a number of people from IIIT, we have people from IIT also. So technically, they do the courses there, they also learn from here, right? So you are still responsible for learning your content. So degree is positive, it's definitely a plus. However, you should have this technical capability to execute.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. I have 2 more questions, sir. Can I ask?
Sure.
Okay. One quickly question I have in my mind. I have 4 years of UX experience and working in a company, in a same company, and my company is type 2 company actually. They are giving me a breathing space to explore things and all, doing researching part and all. So I'm pretty much happy in my current job and not actively looking for a change. Just want to know, sir. Just want to know that company wants HR wants that salary, your current salary and your expected salary. So how will we answer that question?
See, I think a simple question is you decline to answer, right? Now, if you decline to answer, there's a 50-50 chance that the company will say, okay, ignore this person, let's go to the next person, right? So there is a way, there is a strategy how you decline to answer, okay? So what you need to do is, 1, your portfolio needs to be technically strong, okay? So that when the technical guy is looking at it, they will say, okay, because normally when they ask you for your salary, it's towards the end of the process when they're trying to hire you.
Right.
Okay. So you don't have to worry about it in the end. If you have proven your value, you've done an awesome interview, right? The way you want to say is you can always say, no, I don't want to share. It sounds very rude, right? A more humble approach is you want to say, listen, I really don't want to share my salary because I want you to judge me. For me, money is not important, right? I just want you to judge my work, look at the market value and give me a fair amount. That's it. I just care about working with a good company and do amazing work. That's all I care about, right? And I'm not saying this as marketing. I'm not saying say that as a lie. You should really believe it. That is how you'll grow in your career, right? If you say, no, that guy is giving me 1 rupee more, I'm going to jump to that. Your career is always going to be running after that 1 rupee, right? Whereas if you focus on competence, money will come running after you. Does that answer your question, Abdul?
Yes, sir.
Good. Salman. So sorry. Yeah.
You can call me Salman, sir, actually. One last question I have, sir. Only I don't take too much time. Sir, my question is mostly company gives actually I recently apply in a company, so they just directly give me an assignment. They are providing me the assignment and I did the assignment and they reject me actually. I think a couple of months ago I did that assignment, and after 2 to 3 months back they give me the feedback that you are not qualified for the final round. So I just want to know, they are not giving me the proper detailed feedback to get that. So how can we know the proper feedback, sir?
See, I think today is the world of cancel culture.
Actually.
Okay. So it's not that you are the victim, the company can also be a victim, right? Because all it takes is, listen, I give you honest feedback, right? I've had people I've interviewed that I've given feedback to, right? They will basically say, they will complain, Arey, you don't know anything about design. These are bullshit questions, long process. They don't care about people, blah, blah, blah. Put it on Glassdoor, right? Now, in any company, my survival is based on the quality of people I get. Even if one individual blows on Glassdoor and sees that this bad feedback is there and they are not applying to my company, I've lost the opportunity, right? I've also had some other people. These are the unique kind of people that I've met in India. I've never worked in India till I decided to set up the branch in India, right? Isse pehle I've never worked in India. Another unique character came in, right? This individual, basically, his daughter did not get an offer, right? This guy goes on some feedback forum and says, this company is actually all run by Indians. It's an Indian company. They're faking. They're calling themselves an MNC, right? Main kya bolu, right? I mean, what kind of characters there are, right? So the problem that we face, especially from a company perspective, is I am afraid to give feedback to people because I don't know what you will take out of it, right? And so in the process, what happens is a lot of good people also do not get feedback, right? And that is where I think you need to kind of showcase your attitude and your mindset, right? You need to showcase that you're humble, you're nice, you're approachable, you're not the crazy kind of person that's going to come around and screw me, right? And then you want to basically send a thank you note and you want to be nice about the whole process. And then, aaj nahi to kal, you'll get your feedback. Right?
Got it.
But it is always a danger for companies because we are always afraid that maybe we'll hit that one guy who's crazy and we basically have to go do damage control for that individual.
Agreed.
Okay, cool, awesome. Thank you, Salman. Go ahead, Pratik.
Hello, sir. So my first question is already being covered by Salman. So thank you for the salary question. My other question is that regarding masters in the future, are the the certification course. So will be eligible for directly doing the masters in coming future or not?
So which certificate course?
This UX UI design certification course I have done online, bootcamp course. So after that, will I be eligible for the masters in coming years, or I have to do a bachelor's degree before?
Do you have a bachelor? It's a certification and
no, I
master.
have a bachelor's degree in architecture, not in this, but in architecture.
So you don't need a certificate course. You can directly go. Design is the one field. You can go from anywhere.
Actually, I already did. I have just completed in October.
Right. So certification ho na ho koi farak nahi padta. It has no influence on your master's program.
Okay. And lastly, thank you so much for being so humble to attend each and every question. And whatever I just missed, I was missing out in my 16 weeks course. These 3 days I've covered a lot out of it. So it was very helpful and valuable. Thank you so much.
Put it on LinkedIn, help spread the word.
Yeah, sure. That was so
Thank you, Krati. Go ahead, Ayesha.
Yeah, hello, sir. Ayesha here. So I wanted to ask you about that. I had a background of software development, which I did currently pursuing, but I switched my career in the same company to UX UI designing. So I am doing the UX designing work from past 3 years. So while switching, I want to ask you that will that my whole experience will gonna count in while switching to other company? Or because
okay,
at the same time,
let me ask you a separate different question. Okay.
Yeah.
Why is it important that the experience should count?
Because again, up to the salary,
Salary, right?
package thing.
So salary is the point.
And salary, and second, that about also the mindset, because compared to the freshers, I do have from end-to-end knowledge that how from idea to deliver a product, right? And also I do have understand the mindset of a developer, that what design could be, approach is possible in the real world compared to, the dummy world. And I think that's the advantage I have. So I think, will those points be considered, or it just be neglected? Like
absolutely, it'll be considered. But however, let me ask you a different question. Okay. Don't tell me your exact salaries, but is it in the less than 10 lakhs? Is it 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 25? Give me a 5 lakh range. Make number. Where is your salary right now?
10 to 15.
You will, and you got how many years of experience?
Around 7.5.
Which is a total years of experience. Right?
Yeah.
As a designer, how many years of experience do you have?
Around 3.
3. I don't think it should even be a worry. Right?
Okay.
So good designers will automatically, I think anywhere from 3 years, say now, you can easily, with 3 to 4 years of experience, you can easily be, if you deliver and you're able to show the competence and the ability, you should easily be able to be in the 15 plus range. Koi problem nahi hai.
Okay.
Right? In fact, I've seen those ranges go all the way up to 30 lakhs without degrees.
Okay.
Right. So I think you are in a good spot. I don't think you should worry about whether the experience is counted or not. Focus on making sure you're technically perfect in your communication.
Okay. Sure.
Cool.
And also, I have one thing. In the very first day, you talked about that nowadays, the UX designers are merging with the MBA degree. So I do have the plan or the roadmap to, go into the management in further, because, completing that. So do you advise to do the online MBA just to do, or just go work gradually?
So
go to
I
the
would
UX
say,
lead and then that.
In our teams, we sponsored people the BITS Pilani program. Again, online programs are interesting because they're only as good as the students' motivation. If you don't attend a class, you don't listen to the videos, you don't do your homework, nobody is going to tell you. Whereas in an offline, you have to do everything. Right?
Yeah.
So BITS Pilani has a wonderful MBA program that we have sponsored for our own team members. Right? It's really good. Right? They offer an MBA program, and I've seen my team members, they've slogged it, right? So they make you work for that degree. So that's one thing.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Second thing is, if you want to go into management, now try to bridge your design experience with management, right? This is where the user experience book that I showed, right? Written by Satyam, right? That is really good, because that is actually the foundation. So Satyam is the guy who's done an MBA from Harvard, right? Then he and I set this design company together, and our philosophy is, how do you do management with design as the core? Right?
Okay.
So that book is the playbook, the foundational playbook for all of that. So the same curriculum, we've taught in a lot of other places as well. So I would say get that book, because it has also got a lot of techniques, like easily accessible techniques, design techniques that you can apply to do management.
Okay, great.
Right? And that is what I say, scope of thought, because eventually when your scope of thought increases, you will be doing management anyways. Right? You're not going to be doing design.
Yeah.
Cool.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks,
for
Ayesha.
answering my question.
Cool. So this is going to be the last question, and then after this, we'll call it a day. So go ahead, Sanjay.
So I have another question. The last question is it mandatory to have a degree, sir?
No. You do not need a degree to be a designer. In fact, there is a whole push, even in the US, type 3 companies like Google and all that, they are no longer hiring for degrees. And Google is interesting, because that was the one company that in the beginning, it used to say, you have to be from Stanford or Berkeley to get hired.
Okay.
Right? This is the same company that's saying, I don't want degrees anymore. I'm going to hire people without degree. So that is how much the industry itself has changed.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So my advice for people who are looking for degrees is, look for degrees that will help you grow your mind, right? Because degrees are valuable because they give you the breadth of thought. So if you can get into a program that will give you the breadth of thought, that will challenge you, you are challenged, you're working with engineering guys, you're working with management guys, and they're challenging your mindset and all that, that is a good program to go into, right? A degree that will just teach you how to do Photoshop and all that is like, it's a waste of paper. You don't even like throw that paper away.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so done. So Rashmi, आप last minute में question डाले, so I'll take this one question, उसके बाद खत्म, पक्का. So go ahead, Rashmi. ये camera on करना पड़ेगा लेकिन.
मेरा camera is not working, so I have taken a degree from HFI course last year, and after studying that, I scored. I couldn't earn the certificate. I lost it by only 4 marks. But the knowledge I gained, I could feel the difference before Valley Rashmi and after pursuing the course. Along with while studying the UX, my question is will it be a good idea to have a knowledge of data scientist also, so that I can apply that knowledge from a UX perspective?
So कहाँ है? Where is my favorite data scientist here? Krati है क्या इधर?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah, so she's a data scientist. So you want to share your thoughts? So
basically, like if you are a data scientist and if you love data, like you can do anything what you want to do. It's important to if you are like know where and what, when and where to implement. The game is in your pocket.
So maybe to put it in a little bit more succinct, a slightly different way, is this: data scientists understand data, right? So when you do design, especially when you're working with large companies like Google, Microsoft, where like hundreds of millions of users come and use your product, you want to be very familiar with data. So data scientists actually make really good quantitative researchers, right?
I see.
They also make good designers because you understand what data means what and how you should implement your designs, right? So, and again, like I say, I want to reiterate, right? Design is the only space where no matter what discipline you come in, you can actually enrich the program. You can enrich design. You can be a better designer because you know some other discipline. Like personally for me, I was a software guy, right? I did software. I went to the US to do a master's in computer science. And interestingly, like I was just applying for jobs and then, campus jobs at that time. And one of the professors looked at my resume and said, no, you are a user, you are a human factors person. In those days, there was no user experience. They said, you're a human factors person. I'm like, what is human factors? They said, do you have a specialization? Go check it out, right? And so I did human factors and I realized that is exactly what it is. So I was actually, working in unmanned drones and all that stuff. And eventually, I ended up working with Yahoo to do like their websites and all that. And I realized the skills are exactly the same. So I'm an engineer who brings an engineering mindset to design. You're a data scientist who brings a data science mindset to design, right? And data science, again, if you think about it, is the foundation for machine learning and AI. So if you understand data science, you are actually very well equipped to create machine learning and AI-based experiences. So again, to answer your question, it is always a positive, no matter what discipline. I used to have a guy who used to test games for EA games, right? That guy became a phenomenal designer because he could gamify anything, right? He was working on a software that was on computer security and he made it so easy. Like, it's a mindset. You bring your mindset into design and you enrich it. That's what it is.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Chalo then. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for spending the whole week with us or the weekend with us and being so conscious and, being so supportive. We would love, so we will send you a survey link. We would love for you to kind of come in, tell us, fill in the survey and tell us what you think. If you want something else, this survey tells us, how we can improve, what we can do to help you better. So please do that. The second one is if you found value, please like and share the content on YouTube, LinkedIn, subscribe. That is also really important because it helps us get the word out. And the more people that are in the ecosystem, the better we get at it. So that is something that I would like all of you to help us with. So Simran, I can't take your question, buddy.
No, just reminding you for the link. That's the reason I raised my hand.
Okay. So
whenever you're free.
So kaun sa link chahiye?
That the evaluation apart from the
so I have to search for it. So I'll search for it and I'll send it. So it will be on WhatsApp. Okay.
Reminding you, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Simran. Okay. Bye, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.